Did you know about these dark secrets of the Appalachian Trail? Don't watch this horror story alone, especially the last one. I grew up surrounded by wild country roads and deep forests, in a quiet southern town where the trees knew your name. As a kid, I carved trails into the woods with my bike tires, built forts from branches with friends, and learned to both respect and fear nature's unforgiving silence. I lived outdoors. Hitting the Appalachian Trail was always on my list. It was the crown jewel for anyone who craved the wild. Years passed, and I moved to a slightly larger town nestled in the mountainous heart of western North Carolina. That's where I finally laid eyes on the trail itself too. 200 miles of winding earth stretching from Georgia to Maine. It was everything I imagined, vast, raw, and full of promise, but also something else. Something older. Something to watch. You see, the Appalachian Trail isn't just a path carved through wilderness. It's a living story stitched into 14 states, and for nearly a century, millions have walked it, some seeking peace, others testing their limits. But not everyone who enters the forest comes back the same. And some don't come back at all. They call it the longest hiking, only trail in the world. But no one talks about what really happens deep in those woods beyond the markers, beyond the scenic views. What happens when the trees whisper your name back? When you're days from civilization and something starts following you? These are the secrets that cling to the bark of every tree along the Appalachian Trail. And tonight, I want to share them with you. So grab your drink. Pull that blanket close. Because this is going to be a long, unsettling journey. Let's start with what most won't tell you. Each year, around 3,000 people attempt to hike the entire trail. Only about a quarter make it. Most turn back due to injury, weather, or mental exhaustion. That's the official story. But there's another reason, something few want to admit out loud. People. You might expect the usual dangers out here: bears, snakes, weather. But more and more, hikers are encountering something far worse. Other humans. Unstable drifters. Isolated off-grid communities. People who've stepped out of society entirely and now live just off the trail's edges, out of sight, out of law, out of reason. Some of them are harmless. Others are not. Some hikers describe these fringe encampments like shanty towns hidden in the brush, half-built shelters, tarps, smoke from strange fires. Stories surface of travelers being watched, followed, or even threatened for wandering too close. Sometimes the only warning is a guttural cough from the trees. Other times, it's a whisper when no one else is around. It's not all paranoia. More than a few cold cases suggest something out there is targeting hikers. Whether it's people or something else, depends on who you ask. And then there's the folklore. You can't talk about the Appalachian Trail without diving into its twisted mythology. Let's start with a name you've probably heard, the Bell Witch. The legend began in the early 1800s, in the woods near Robertson County, Tennessee. It said John Bell cheated a woman named Kate Bates in a land deal. Afterward, she cursed him and the land he walked on. That's when things got dark. From 1817 to 1821, the Bell family reported being terrorized by a spirit they claimed was Kate's angry ghost. She appeared in the shape of a snarling dog, a crow, sometimes just a voice from nowhere. But her rage was focused mostly on the family's daughter, Betsy. She wasn't just haunted, she was attacked. Her bedsheets ripped off in the middle of the night. Bruises on her arms. Scratches on her back. The family was so rattled they begged friends to stay over and witness it, and they did. One man, James Johnston, swore he heard the voice, saw the violence with his own eyes. Eventually, even General Andrew Jackson got involved. He arrived with armed men, scoffing at the ghost stories until they experienced it too. That night, the witch beat one of the soldiers so badly, Jackson reportedly left by dawn. John Bell died mysteriously soon after. Some say the curse never ended. Visitors still go to the Bell Witch Cave, hoping for a glimpse. And many leave claiming something followed them home. But this is only scratching the surface. There are lights in the mountains that don't make sense. Strange strobing orbs, called the Brown Mountain Lights, have been spotted for more than a century. Some say they're train lights or swamp gas. Others say they're spirits, lost souls, warnings. I saw them once myself, on the Blue Ridge Parkway. We were hiking, the sky clear and cold, when glowing lights appeared high above us. They blinked, pulsed and vanished. Not a sound. Not a breeze. It was like the mountain blinked back. There's more like the Flatwoods Monster, a towering creature said to have emerged from a crash site in West Virginia, its green face glowing, its eyes burning like fire. The US military investigated it back in the 50s, but no official answers were given. Just silence. Then there's the wild man Appalachia's version of Bigfoot. Since the early 1800s, locals have reported massive footprints, guttural roars, and shadowy figures lurking just beyond the firelight. Maybe folklore. Maybe something else. But if you think these are just stories told to scare kids, think again. Because the real darkness that comes from the stories that are all too real. And it begins with a man named Joel. The first recorded murder on the Appalachian Trail came in 1974. His name was Joel Polson, a 26-year-old with a dream of hiking the legendary path from Springer Mountain, Georgia. He wasn't going alone. With him was Margaret Harris, just 17 at the time, a waitress he had met in a small Georgia town called 5 Points. At first, Margaret thought Joel was just another outdoorsy guy with big plans. But he kept returning to the restaurant, talking about the trail, about the wilderness, about how perfect she'd be as a hiking partner. Eventually, perhaps caught up in the romance of it all, she said yes. On May 9th, they set off from Springer Mountain, weighed down with supplies, wide-eyed and green to the reality of what lay ahead. By the end of that day, Joel would be dead. They hadn't made it far. Just 6 miles in, they found a small lean-to-low gap shelter and decided to stop for the night. But someone was already there. He introduced himself as Ralph. He didn't have gear. No food. No pack. Just a worn jacket, a tattered canvas bag, and a face that hadn't seen a mirror or a shower in weeks. He claimed to be a hiker, too. But Joel didn't buy it. Still, there was nowhere else to go, and night was falling fast. So they stayed. Margaret later said Joel was uneasy from the start. While they cooked dinner, they offered Ralph some food. He declined. Instead, he got up and went looking for firewood. Then he did it again. And again. As the sky darkened, the unease thickened. Something wasn't right. Joel told Margaret they'd leave first thing in the morning, before breakfast. Just get back on the trail. Put distance between themselves and that man. But they never got the chance. At sunrise, Joel woke early and headed to the stream to wash up. Margaret stayed back at the shelter, lacing her boots. Then a loud crack. The echo of a gunshot through the trees. She turned, and Joel was on the ground. Before she could even scream, Ralph was on her. He tied her wrists and led her into the woods. Forced her to sit with her back against a tree, then bound her legs around it. Then he disappeared. 10 minutes. Maybe 15. Long enough for dread to settle in. When Ralph returned, he untied her only to lead her back to the shelter. Joel's body was gone. He rummaged through Joel's things, searching for valuables. Found only traveler's checks. Frustrated, he led Margaret away again, this time 200 yards deeper into the forest, and tied her to another tree. He promised to leave a note at the shelter with her location. He even left her a granola bar and a bottle of water which, of course, she couldn't reach with her hands bound behind her back. Then, just as suddenly, he returned again. Said he was afraid no one would find her. Offered her a choice: stay tied to a tree or come with him. To the highway. To freedom. Margaret, terrified but thinking quickly, agreed to go with him. Now untied, she led the way, Ralph close behind, still gripping the gun. He warned her, if she tried to call for help, he'd kill not just her, but anyone she signaled. They walked in silence. Just the wind through the trees and the crunch of leaves beneath their boots. And then the sound of chainsaws. 2 men appeared on a trail above them. Workers. Locals. Margaret's heart jumped, but she knew better than to speak. They passed without incident, and the nightmare continued. Ralph talked as they walked. He told her he'd escaped from prison, that he needed Joel's gear to head west. They stopped to rest at Rocky Knob Shelter, where Ralph studied Joel's map. He realized the road was just a few miles away. That's when he changed the plan again. They wouldn't part ways on the road. Instead, they'd stay in a motel. Soon after, a woman stopped to give them a ride. Ralph lied, saying they'd lost their IDs but still had traveler's checks. He asked if there was a place nearby that wouldn't ask too many questions. The driver pointed them to the Chattahoochee Motel. There, Ralph signed the guest book as Mr. and Mrs. Joel Polson. They picked up food and beer from the shop next door. Inside the room, they watched an Elvis Presley movie on TV. He even offered her something from Joel's backpack as a souvenir, he said. She refused. Later, Margaret asked to shower. Ralph followed her in, afraid she'd escape through the window. Eventually, she lay down exhausted, mentally broken, and slept. Ralph stayed up, guarding her with the gun in hand. The next day, they cashed another traveler's check, and once again Ralph claimed he would let her go. This time, the plan was a bus station. They hitched a ride into town. Margaret bought a $10 ticket to Columbia. Ralph, a $3 ticket to Atlanta. When Ralph's bus arrived first, Margaret held her breath, watching him disappear through the terminal doors. She didn't move until her own bus rolled in. By nightfall, she was in Columbia. She didn't call her brother, didn't go home. Instead, she picked up a payphone and dialed the Columbia Police Department. It was finally over. But for Joel, it was far too late. When Margaret gave her statement to the police, everything moved fast. Authorities relayed her report to Georgia, and within days, a team led by Sheriff Frank Baker and Special Agent Stanley Thompson was hiking into Low Gap Shelter. It didn't take long for them to find Joel's body half buried beneath the underbrush across the stream. A plastic bag was tied around his head. The autopsy revealed a .38 caliber bullet had been fired point-blank into the back of his skull. Just one shot. 5 days on the trail. That's all it took for Joel to cross paths with a killer. But who was Ralph? A tip called into the Atlanta Police Department changed everything. A woman said she knew a man who matched the description, and she gave them an address. Officers secured a warrant. When they entered the home, they found it all Joel's gear, his clothes, and his backpack. Even the murder weapon. Now, all they had to do was wait. Not long after, Ralph Howard Fox walked through the door. He was arrested on the spot. At first, he was calm. He admitted the gun was his. Denied any intention to hurt Margaret. But his criminal history told a far different story, one far darker than anyone imagined. You see, this wasn't Ralph's first time taking someone. His rap sheet stretched back years. At just 17, he kidnapped a girl from a party when his parents were out of town. The following year, arrested for car theft. Then, breaking and entering. In 1963, he took a 15-year-old girl to New Mexico crossing state lines illegally. He was charged with statutory rape and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. And yet, somehow he married her. By 1964, that girl was pregnant. Under stress, Ralph escalated again, this time forcing another teenage girl into his car at gunpoint and driving her to a secluded spot in Troy, Michigan. As he was tying her up, a police officer stumbled upon the scene. That incident earned him a 15-year sentence. But he didn't serve it. Not fully. He escaped and vanished. Eventually, he was caught again in Miami, 1969. Then paroled. Then he broke into his ex-wife's home rifle in hand, waiting for her to return. He missed his shot and disappeared once more, bouncing between cities until he wound up in Atlanta. Just days before Joel and Margaret stepped onto the Appalachian Trail. In October 1975, he was indicted for murder. He pled guilty and received a life sentence in Georgia State Prison. But somehow, that still wasn't the end of his story. In 1991, after more than 15 years behind bars, Ralph was granted a 1-month reprieve to attend his brother's funeral in Michigan. and then parole. Yes, they let him go. He moved north, to a quiet county about 50 miles outside Detroit. A new town, a new start. But evil doesn't retire. 7 months later, Ralph missed his check-in with his parole officer, then vanished. Again. And on March 5, 1992, police found the body of 29-year-old Diane Good. She had been murdered and left like discarded trash. Using towing records, investigators placed Ralph at the scene. A nationwide alert was issued. 2 days later, in Skagit County, Washington, he was caught trying to break into a parked car. It was over again. At trial, Ralph pleaded innocence. But the jury didn't buy it. He was found guilty of murder once more. In June 2003, his story finally ended inside a prison hospital. Lung cancer took what the law never fully could. He died alone. But the trauma he left behind, the lives shattered, stolen, that lingers. You might think this is where the Appalachian Trail's darkness ends. That Ralph Fox was the exception. But he wasn't. He was just the beginning.